Hi, so it sounds like we had a volume problem on our last recording. So I'm going to pick up right here where we have soon after Ralph arrived in Jamestown. He ran out of tobacco for his pipe. He had been smoking tobacco that the Spanish had brought to Europe from America. It had cost a lot of money in England, but he liked it. Now he tried some tobacco that the Native Americans in Virginia grew, and he didn't like that at all. James Rolfe left Jamestown. He moved farther up the James River. He started a farm near the village of Henrico. Rolfe decided to buy some tobacco seed that grew in South America and some that grew in the West Indies. He tested the different kinds of tobacco plants to find one that would grow in Virginia. Soon Rolfe was growing excellent tobacco and shipping it back to England. People in England liked John Rolfe's Virginia tobacco too, and it quickly became Virginia's cash crop. So remember, a cash crop is something that is grown in large quantities and then sold to other countries and places for a profit. Everywhere in the colony, people started planting tobacco, even in the streets and in graveyards. Soon the colony was shipping thousands of pounds of Virginia tobacco to England. Smoking became very popular in England, but few English people understood how unhealthful it was. King James was one of the few people in England who decided that smoking was bad. He wrote a book called A Counterblast to Tobacco that warned against smoking the stinking weed. Smoking, he said, was loathsome, disgusting to the eye, hateful to the nose, harmful to the brain, and also dangerous to the lungs, but no one paid any attention. Just too bad because King James really knew what he was talking about, right? More adventures of Pocahontas. Meanwhile, Pocahontas went to visit some friends in an Indian village. While she was there, an English sea captain kidnapped her. He took her to Jamestown in his boat and then up the river to the village of Henrico. When Pocahontas got to Henrico, the women gave her English clothes to wear. They taught her to speak English and to read the Bible. Pocahontas became a Christian and took the name Rebecca. John Rolfe met Pocahontas in Henrico. The Native American princess fell in love with him. Her father, Chief Powhatan, said they could get married. Everyone was happy for Pocahontas and John Rolfe. The Indians and the colonists lived in peace for several years. A year after Pocahontas and John Rolfe were married, their son Thomas was born. They took the baby to England to visit John Rolfe's family. While Pocahontas was in England, everyone treated her like a queen. They called her Lady Rebecca. She made many new friends there, including King James. She also had a happy meeting with her old friend Captain John Smith. Pocahontas was about to leave England to go home when she caught a terrible disease and died. She was only 22 years old, and she was buried in England. The year that Pocahontas died, the Virginia colony shipped 20,000 pounds of tobacco to England. The gentlemen of Virginia wanted to get rich growing tobacco, so they cleared new land for large farms called plantations. Because they owned plantations, they were becoming known as planters. At first, planters like John Rolfe thought that growing tobacco would make them as rich as finding gold. As we've seen, John Rolfe was a very lucky man. He became rich by farming tobacco, but this was not a lucky time for many other English settlers in Virginia or for Virginia's Native American people. Tobacco plantations needed lots of land and lots of workers. The English colonists were greedy for all the land they could get. This caused several wars to break out between the Native Americans and the English. There were massacres on both sides. By 1625, the English had won the war. Although the Indians outnumbered the English had guns, and that gave them a great advantage. Also, many Indians were dying from sicknesses. They were caused by the germs that the English settlers had brought to Virginia. The English drove the Indians out of most of eastern Virginia and took over their land for tobacco plantations. So, as they were, excited to grow this cash crop, and build these plantations, a consequence of that was pushing more and more Native Americans off their land, and then also really having to bring in a lot of people to work that land, which is how we arrive at this next little section. As time passed, plantations grew larger and larger. Some plantations looked like tiny towns. There was a large house for the owner and small cabins for the slaves. Other buildings held workshops for carpenters, blacksmiths, and other skilled workers. All of these buildings were in the middle of fields of tobacco. It was hard to find workers. Before very long, African slaves were brought to Virginia in chains to do all the hard work. The workers had to plant the tobacco. When it was ripe, they had to pick it. The tobacco had to be dried. Then it was packed into barrels ready for shipping to England. And we will read more about the slaves and the life of slaves in some of our upcoming lessons. But once these plantations kind of get going, um, then slavery becomes a way to have people work and do jobs to keep those plantations producing tobacco or other cash crops that other colonies find works best in their area. All right, sorry about the hiccups with the sound on the last video. Bye.